you everybody for being here. Today we have a very special webinar about the Commission of the Status of the Commission on the Status of Women that every year is held in New York, and thousands of women come to meet regularly in March to talk about the main issues of women around the world. All of them are COSOC NGOs, and for us the best opportunity to share, raise our voice in front of the UN, to meet our delegates of the government at the UN also. And our speakers today, I'm very pleased and honored to introduce to you Susan O'Male. She's a member of BPW New York. She's a former CSW Chair. We are very honored because she is the second one in the history of CSW as a member of BPW to have this very important. We also have Hellen Swales. She's a former BPW president of New Zealand. She has been a delegate for many, many years in the CSW. And Francesca Burack. She's a former president of BPW New York Club, and currently she's a UN representative in New York. And she is currently the chair of the BPW International Standing Committee of Development, Training, and Empowerment. Thank you very much. And I think that we will start with Susan. Am I correct? Susan, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. I'm so glad we're doing this because there's so much that's going on in terms of CSW. I'm going to start with saying NGO CSW is going to do on November 3rd an open forum for people who have not been or don't know that much about CSW. And I will repeat that at the end too, because people say, but I don't know anything when they come. Well, we're trying to do something about that. All right, first, the dates of CSW, March 13th to the 25th. It starts with Consultation Day, as we have in the past, but what we did last year and this year, Consultation Day is now from New York, and it's from the 5 regions. In other words, NGO CSW now is much more regional from the 5 regions, and it's about time. And so all of our planning now is, in the old days, it was New York and Vienna and Geneva, but now it's Arab MENA, quite active, South America and the Caribbean, very active, Africa, very active, Asia Pacific, very active. And what it has done is so expanded our outlook. And also, if we're working on making a statement can't just come from the US and from Europe. And so this has been quite wonderful. I am at the moment the co-chair of the advocacy research group that is doing all of the research around the priority theme, and will then do recommendations to member states for the outcome document with the help of Hellen Swales, I hope, who has been so wonderful in this in the past. All right, now I just should say, perhaps all of you know this, but people get confused. When you talk about the Commission and the Status of Women, all right, that's member states, okay? And UN Women is the secretariat that puts together the event. with the member states, and NGO CSW and the CSWs in the regions, we are the ones that work with UN Women to put on this event. Now, last year, it was all virtual. And do you know how many people we had? 27,000 people. 27,000 people. It sort of scares UN Women in the member states, but so far we haven't figured out how to use this scaring them effectively. And also, we say this over and over again, NGOs put on parallel events, right? And the countries put on side events. We sometimes work with the countries on their side events, and they sometimes work with us on our parallel events, but we are separate. We are across the street, we are separate. Now, this year, in terms of the NGO part, it will be totally virtual. That's a decision we have made about a month ago. Now, why we did this is that there's no way we can have people come into the country who are not vaccinated. And people, it's been so unfair about vaccination in this world. Also, it's so expensive to come to New York, and that leaves out so many people. So we are going to be virtual. Now, I do not know about the UN, and I do not know about UN Women. The General Assembly, they had a lot of people came in the General Assembly, of course, from member states. They were on the honor system about vaccinations, and some of them didn't exactly uphold it, such as Brazil. But anyway, so I don't know what they're going to do. The UN orchestra has been allowed into the UN. I play in the UN orchestra. We've been allowed in, but NGOs have not been allowed in, and it has greatly, I think, circumscribed our effectiveness. All right, what else do I need to say? I need to say that the priority theme, which you probably know, but let me just say it, is achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction. That's an interesting piece that's put now, disaster reduction. All right, the review theme, which I think Hellen Swales is doing interesting work on the future of work and women. But anyway, the review theme is women's economic empowerment in the changing world of work. I mean, that's just made perfectly, Hellen, for you to do some kind of event. The amazing news is that the application for parallel events is going out this Friday. Can you believe that? We're organized enough to put out the parallel event application. Yay. I'm not sure if, I think they may be stricter about addressing the priority theme and the review theme. They say they're only going to have 600 or 650 parallel events. I'm trying to change that. I am on the planning committee for CSW 66. Because if you have, our platform this year has 45,000, room for 45,000. So if you only have 650 events with 45,000 people, my feeling is that some of the people will not be happy because they want to do their parallel event. I do hope, well, Hellen, I'm sure you'll put forth something, I hope, but do put forth parallel events. Last year, I did help Pioneers in Skirts, Ashley, whatever her name is, very impressive young person. And they did a really, really fine parallel event. But it would be nice to have more BPW parallel events. And I think we can probably do multiple ones because we're so big and in so many regions. Now, is there any, oh, I know. I need to say they're going to cost $125. The platform is enormously expensive. And the other thing that they've decided is that you have to provide your own Zoom link. I don't know how that will go, but it may make for less chaos. Anyway, that is what has been decided. Now, what else do I say? I'm almost done. On this, we call this not a platform, but this year it's a portal. So that's the word. And on that portal, we will have conversation circles, and we're figuring out all of the topics right now. There'll be an artisan fair. It was fantastic last year. And the co-chair is from Cameroon. And so we're going to get lots of interesting things, exhibitors from Africa. We have an exhibit hall that you can rent and do events. There will be a virtual handbook. I believe we'll have briefings, as we do with the head of the Bureau for the Commission on the Status of Women, and with UN Women. There will be caucuses and advocacy training. I think that's it. I want to repeat, November 3rd, open forum. I advise always taking a look at the UN Women website under CSW 66, where you get the latest information. They are at the moment supposedly having their expert group meeting, but they have not put out a concept note, or they have not put out the papers. And I have been asking them every day, and they keep promising. But how do you have an expert group meeting without papers and concept note? Who knows? And anything else? I think. Oh, also take a look always at the NGO CSW New York website. Of course, I'd like all of you to be members, so you can get their the newsletter, but you can probably get it anyway. Just sign up for it. So that's it. It's going to be exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan. I think that at the end we will have some minutes for questions. Now we have Francesca or Hellen. Francesca, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. I have a small PowerPoint here. Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone here. I'm going to be talking about the UN reps and what we do at CSW, but I thought that I would put it in the context of the UN reps and what we do generally and how that fits into what we do. So let's see, I'm going to just get that down. Okay, so the who, what, where, and how. So we report into the BPW International Vice President of UN, who was newly elected at the last Congress. And she's been a UN rep out of Thailand, and she sits on the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. And then our UN reps in New York City. So we have Helena Finn, who is our main UN rep. So information flows through the main UN rep to all of us. As you could see, Susan O'Malley, myself, Judy Killichand, and Yamin Ahmad, are all on today. So we meet regularly on a monthly basis, and we get ground passes to attend meetings, events inside the UN building, which is really quite exciting. We get to go to meetings, we get to go to celebrations, there are remembrance days, and this pass allows us to just go in. Of course, there are some closed meetings that we don't go to, but we sit on committees. We each pick a different committee to sit on. And there are many NGO committees, and some of them are human rights, stop trafficking, the CSW, which Susan just announced, economic and financial development, migration. So we sit in on these meetings, and at our monthly meeting of the New York City reps, we report back on the activities of the committee, what's happening, the issues that were brought up, and whether or not there are statements that we need to have BPW sign on to or make. And Susan O'Malley's been very instrumental in bringing some of that information to us on a general basis through CSW. But then in our committees, like on Stop Trafficking of Persons, during the holidays, there are chocolate companies that we get people to boycott because they use, slave labor in the fields, in the cocoa fields. And so we get petitions on a yearly basis. Before COVID, members of this particular committee would fly to Thailand to meet with groups that were working on anti-trafficking in Thailand itself. I never did one of those, but it's very exciting. Also, you can visit consulates and talk to people at the consulate of different countries about issues like trafficking of people. And so there were visits to the consulates here in New York City. And we're very lucky, UN reps in New York City, because we have the UN building here. We have all of the consulates are here. And so our connection to different people, different countries, and other organizations that are working on the same issues, we collaborate. It's just really a great feeling to be able to be so instrumental in helping to combat these terrible, terrible issues that affect women and all people. Let's see. And we send our minutes to BPW International, the BP of UN, and I think a copy goes to the president. The way we participate in CSW, is we use our ground passes. We do not usually, it's been a tradition in New York City that we don't apply to get a delegate pass. And Helen's going to go into, I think, the delegate pass as part of her presentation. So I won't, be doing that. But since we have access to the UN building on such a frequent basis, it's been our tradition not to apply for a delegate pass, which gets you into a lot more things. So here's the way we function in terms of CSW. So before CSW, we usually meet and we decide who's going to what event so that we can spread ourselves out and cover more ground. During CSW, there's so many things to learn. We connect with other people, we network, we go to regional meetings. Susan mentioned the Artesian Fair, which is just absolutely fabulous. And there are some BPW specific UN and delegate meetings, UN rep and delegate meetings during CSW. Let's see, and I'm talking about in-person meetings right now. Last year, I'm not quite sure what we did virtually. It's such a fog, that virtual world. So I don't remember whether we had a UN rep meeting during CSW last year. And then after, we report back to each other. And we look at what kind of follow-ups do we want to do with people that we've met? Are there organizations that we should be talking to, in terms of their UN reps and us? And do we want to collaborate on different things? And we usually do a report back to our local club and our federation, because not everyone comes to CSW. I can't wait for these in-persons to happen again. And here's one of the photos from one of the meetings that we attended. So the people in the arena here are actually the delegates from all of the countries. And afterwards we had to play, of course. So I sat in front of our United States sign and I took photos. It was very exciting. And here we have Megan, and who's our president, BPW USA president, and Kathy Kelly, who's our vice president of membership for USA. We were hanging out together, and our blue scarves we got from this group that was there that were speaking out against the sexual assaults and abuse that were being committed by the UN security forces that had been sent into these various countries to keep the peace. And members of this crew around the world were having charges brought against them in terms of sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and sexual violations. So we were hooking up with them. They gave us these blue scarves, and we got a little bit involved with what they were doing at the time. So this is a broad general meeting that we attended. And by the way, I think this might have been the year that Kathy Kelly, who was a delegate, represented us during Azul's vice presidency of UN, where we got to make a statement in front of this group, which is sometimes what happens. We get invited to make statements, and we, meaning BPW, at the United Nations. And in the past, we also made statements and did a lot of work when there were worldwide women congresses. And we made statements, we organized women. So we have a history of being strong advocates for women, and we have a history of being women of influence at the United Nations. There are side events that people go to. I love this slide because in the center here is Harriet Friedlander. She's a former UN rep, a former New York City UN rep, and that's her badge that she was wearing around her neck. And she was a UN rep for quite a while, I think probably 15 or 20 years. She represented BPW International. And in the background, you can see former VP UN Arzul. And here is Catherine, our present president. And this was a side event of Women in Corporate World Influencing and Impact, which, by the way, was one of the BPW events that was created by the New York City membership, the New York City UN members. And well, what else did I want to mention about that slide? I think that was it. So now we've gone virtual. Oh, and we do other things during CSW. So this was a workshop that we did in the evening. It was called Arts and Business, and how can arts influence the business world in a positive way. And over here, we have Elisa Campos. She and I co-led this. She did most of the work and was up there, and I did the business piece. She was doing the artistic piece here, and it was just wonderful. And these are all our BPW sisters, United States, Brazil. I think there was somebody there from Portugal, not Portugal, Lebanon, and a few other countries. So virtual, and we also do other things during CSW, not just inside the UN and going to all of these side events, but we also, get together and we do our own networking. So virtually now, since we're all going virtual again, we do some of the same follow-up procedures, before. We follow some of the same procedures before, during, and after. We have many, many more opportunities to attend events because, we just have to click and we sit here in our own homes or offices to attend. Of course, we get a little brain and eye fatigue, so we try to select widely, take some breaks throughout the day, and connect privately through the chat box to people that we want to connect with. It's not as easy as when you see someone face to face, and I can't wait to get back to face, in person, face to face, I should say. And then there's always ways to comment during group discussions, questions, and answers. So thank you all for being here today. Hopefully you'll come to New York City once again. It doesn't have to be during CSW. And if you do, please feel free to contact me. I'd be only too happy to help you, take you around, do whatever. We're wide open. And if you want to know more about the UN, on the BPW website, there is a section here. The bottom one is about the UN itself. So of course, the one prior to that is about BPW International. So I'll be willing to answer questions when questions and answers are occurring. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Francesca. Very interesting to know all about what you are doing there. And now, Hellen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Look, very, very good morning to everyone. It's really early here in New Zealand, but I want to first of all acknowledge Dr. Anne Hilty and Yasmin for allowing us this platform to talk to you about an amazing event that happens every year in New York. And I'm really impressed to be on the floor and sharing the floor with Susan O'Malley and Francesca. It's just amazing and great that actually not only do I know them, but I class them as really good friends. So I have the really exciting part to tell you about what it's like to be part of a delegation of at the UN. And first of all, I'd like to just say that for me in local government, it's like local government on steroids. It's just amazing. But to give you a little bit of background and context, I've been going to CSW since 2019 when they introduced the Sustainable Development Goals. And over that period of time, right up until I was 2019, the last physical CSW where I was part of the government delegation for New Zealand, I've had the pleasure of actually speaking in a number of the missions in New York, the Mexican mission, the German mission, and the Australian mission, on various side events that have happened outside of the UN. I've also been part of conversations on side events inside the UN, so I'm very, very familiar and comfortable with that space. When you go to CSW and you're part of a government delegation, the work actually starts really, really early. While people think that it's in that 2-week period that you're actually there, that's actually the important part of the negotiation part, but everything starts way before then. It starts around September of the previous year. And when it starts in September, that's when government delegations, particularly the mission states or the states that are part of CSW, start having that conversation and drawing around the theme of CSW and start pulling the threads of language. And you end up with this huge, well, I won't say clumsy document, but this huge document that can run up to almost 200 pages. And that's a starting point, but usually civil society doesn't get to see it until it's around 73 pages or 80 pages. And that's sort of getting to the sharp end of the negotiations when you pick up that paper. And as Susan said, that's when your experts start looking at the paper and unpacking it and start thinking, so what are the threads that we need to pull together that we want our voice to be part of? Civil society, it's really important that we actually have a seat at the table, at the negotiating table. So we need to actually start talking with our governments around that September time to say we need that voice at the table, because it's that advocacy voice that we need with a lens where we hold the governments accountable. So while it's the governments that are negotiating on the floor, when there's civil society presence here, it gives another lens of the language that we want put in there. So CSW really is about the accumulation of referring back to the Beijing platform, and it's keeping the global partners accountable for the movement of gender equality for women. It's the only place where it's dedicated to the equality of women in all spaces. So to go to CSW and to be able to advocate on those spaces is really, really important. So when you get there onto the negotiation floor, what happens is that you have regional blocks. And New Zealand is in the block that we call the mountain states. So in the mountain states, we have 8 countries that we sit there and we have a collective voice. And in those 8 countries, we've got Australia, Canada, Sweden, Liechtenstein, Denmark, Belgium, and New Zealand. And when we speak, we actually speak as a collective voice. The first time when I went onto the negotiating floor as part of the government delegation, I asked my delegation if I could remove myself off the floor and go into the viewing gallery. And the reason why I did that was I needed to have a sense of the different blocks, because each region has a block. And I wanted to know that when you were speaking, where that voice was coming from on the floor, because when you're on the floor, you only hear a voice, and it's good to know where your allies are. So for me, that first session, it was really important to get a sense of the room. So directly sitting in front of us was the Holy See. We had USA, which was further down. We had all the Latin American countries right in the front. And I have to say, Mexico was one of those Latin American countries that had a lot of empathy when we spoke on the floor, particularly around Indigenous women. We had the Middle Eastern countries to our left, and to our right, there was the big block of the EU. So when the conversation, and it got to really technical statements or parts of statements where language was really important, you knew where your opposition was. So what happened was, when you had the document in front of you and you were negotiating it on the floor, if you were able to actually get an agreed sentence or paragraph, then you would move on. But my role as civil society there was to connect with our people outside the negotiating room. So what we did was we sorted out a WhatsApp group. So it meant that they had the document in front of them. I was able to tell them what paragraph that we were up to, and that they, if they had an issue or some sort of language or a sticking point there, they were able to feed that into me, and I was able to get that to our block and say, this is what I wanted to say. I also had the opportunity to actually use my voice on the platform, which was wonderful, and even had the opportunity to negotiate a paragraph that was in there, which meant that I had to go to those that we needed to find some agreed language that we wanted to put in there. There's a lot of work, they're long hours, absolutely. You can be sitting for anywhere up to 12 hours. The sessions start about 10 o'clock. But all of these sessions don't start until the second week of CSW. So that first week, as a part of the government delegation, we were meeting other missions. So it was meeting with our block, or part of our block of the Mountain States, to just get a sense before we got on the negotiating table, what were our compromises, how far were we prepared to push, and where was our fallback position. So we knew the lay of the land and what was negotiable and what was non-negotiable when we got on the floor. And then we just picked out who on the floor were helpful for us. Something that a lot of the countries did was on that second week around 7 o'clock or 7:30, New Zealand used to do it every time in the second week. We would meet at the UN hotel across the road from the negotiation, or the UN building, and we would give a briefing to civil society, all of the groups there that were there from New Zealand. Sometimes Australia would come and join us, or anybody else would join us. And we would give them a brief of the sense of what happened on the floor the day before or the night before, or what was happening immediately. And it also gave them a second opportunity to feed into the conversation. They say that civil society stalks the halls of outside of the negotiating rooms, and they do. And it's really important that civil society stays there and takes every opportunity to talk to those that are actually doing the negotiation, the different missions that are there. If you can also find those countries that have empathy for any of the things that you want to push, that you want to put on the table, you actually need to make sure that you make that conversation happen. But the important thing about it is that when you find that person that you can speak to, don't bother telling them your name or who you are. You need to take the best opportunity of making that connection by telling them what their issue is, what it is that you want, what the outcome is. Then if you're lucky, if you still hold their attention, then you tell them the organisation you're from. But I can't emphasise enough what Susan O'Malley said about the training. To understand the language that is acceptable, you need to start reading the agreed conclusions of previous sessions. It gives you some powerful insights of, you know, how to couch your argument and get what it is. This is a cumbersome situation in the sense that the agreed language, when you want it to be quite provocative, it's really hard to get them there. It's one of those movable feasts that what I really enjoy about CSW now is that there are 2 days when the young voices come to CSW and they push the limits and they talk about the things that they want in the agreed conclusion. And that's when the provocative language comes in. And we try and make sure that we can get it into the agreed conclusions. So you end up at the end of the day, a document that's maybe 15 pages long. And it's, you know, when you think that it started in excess of 200 and it comes down to that, it's pretty hard yards to get it there. I'm going to leave it there, but it's just a wonderful opportunity, if you can, to start talking and having those conversations with your government now to say, even though it's on a virtual platform, that an NGO voice, it's really important to be there. And I congratulate, you know, I see the president of Spain is here, that they've got their own ECOSOC status and that they will be submitting their own statement, because the statements have to be in, good to see Sylvia, have to be in by the 15th, which is only a couple of days. And once again, it's like Susan and Francesca said, keep an eye on the website NGO CSW, because it gives you all the information that you do. And I'm looking forward to working with Susan, and I've just been appointed co-chair of the Asia Pacific region. So looking forward to being involved with CSW again. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, if I could just make one point, I didn't mean to leave off. Last year, as President Ahmad just put in the chat box, last year, New York City hosted a Zoom pre-CSW meeting to greet and chat, and we will be doing that again. So thank you, Nermeen, for reminding me of that.
Okay, my turn to jump in. Thank you to all three of our speakers. Really, really wonderful. I want to open the floor for discussion in a moment, which includes questions and comments, anything you want to add. But I'll start off with my own comment, and that is how hard it is to get the ticket, so to speak, to be a delegate. So many people always ask about being delegates or have a great desire to be. As I know, BPW, like every other NGO, still only is given 20 delegate passes for each CSW each year, which is also why the UN reps don't take those passes, because not only do we have those in the New York area that Francesca showed us on her PowerPoint, but we've also got other UN reps around the world. So that would be more than our 20 passes. So they don't take them because they do have general access. That also means they're not actually on the floor serving as a delegate, unfortunately for them. Those get shared among our 5 regions. So now we're down to 4 passes per region, and several of them are usually delegated specifically for our young BPW members. So as you can see, there are very few for each continent actually available through BPW. And it's usually suggested, because we generally have more than one women's group membership, most of us, that if you can get a delegate pass from any other women's organization, if it's possible for you, then you don't have to be one of those who are trying to get one of the 20 that BPW does. So wherever you can get it, that's also helpful. Susan, I wonder first from you if, and actually Susan put a couple of questions for you, Helen, in the chat, so you might check those, and I'm going to turn to you next to respond to those. But Susan, I want to first ask you, related to the comment I just made, since this year will again be virtual and is obviously very well organized by now, because they're about to send out the call for parallel events and other things, as opposed to last year, which was the first time doing it virtually. Will the number of delegate passes, to your knowledge, remain the same? Because I think there's still the limitation of how many delegates per NGO, even though it's a virtual event that generally speaking accommodates many more people.
Again, remember, there are 2 sides. In other words, there's the NGO side, and then there is the UN Women Commission side. As of now, UN Women has not decided if there will be 20 delegates. There probably will not be, and we will probably not be allowed in the UN. I do not know for sure, but that's the way it seems to be going. As a result, civil society is being cut out a lot of what goes on in CSW. There is the revision of the working methods this year, and we're trying to get it so there is more civil society participation, but I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not nearly as rosy in my comments as Hellen, and I love her rosiness, because there are a lot of things going on that are not so good, and that last year's negotiations at the end, when things were taken out, and the U.S., it ended with the U.S. negotiator standing up and saying, well, countries are filibustering. This is shocking what's going on. This is a shocking document. I actually have a video of that, because things were taken out at the last minute, and because there's a great push against human rights. And that what is important to many of the members of the commission is development and not human rights. And they have to realize that both are important. But there is hostility towards women and gender equality. So I liked Hellen's rosiness, but and maybe it's more rosy if you're inside more. Most of us are sitting outside the door talking with Hellen virtually when we're allowed to even get that far.
All right, so I understand from what you said, Susan, that while the advantage and the necessity of holding this as a virtual meeting is there, that also the negative side is that there may not be delegates actually in the middle of the process of decision making. And if they are, this sounds like it's actually a hybrid event, not a purely virtual one. So the delegates would still have to go to New York and still have to have access to the UN floor. Is that correct?
We are recommending that people do not come to New York.
Sure.
But who knows what UN women act way better. They're very slow in getting stuff out. But I suspect, who knows? I can't really say.
Still to be decided.
Yeah.
Right, so Hellen, I'm going to go back to you next so that you can respond to the two questions or comments that Susan had put in the chat for you while you were presenting. And just before you do, I'll ask any others that would like to make a comment to use the raise hand function. And you can raise your hand now. It puts you in the lineup for me calling on you. That's at the bottom of your screen. If you click on reactions, you also have nice things like smiley faces and hand clapping and so on. But one of those says raise hand. So if you click on that, it puts you in the queue. So Hellen?
Okay, so thank you, Susan, for giving me those questions. So with regard to the working methods of CSW that we reviewed, last year was a debacle with regard to only those mission delegates in New York were able to go onto the floor at the United Nations. And it was interesting. And I don't think the UN actually put enough preparation into how the different regions or countries would actually participate. I think that the NGO CSW was better organised because you actually broke it down into the 5 regions, Susan. But when it came to the actual missions doing the negotiation, because they couldn't go into the night like you normally do when you're physically there and be able to do your input and have your groups collectively. So what happened was that the mountain nations were actually having to have their side Zoom meetings as a block as to how they were going to present their argument on the day when it came to negotiating the different paragraphs. It was a debacle because, as you said, the time restraint as to have an agreed outcome at the end of the 2 weeks. And when they found that they weren't getting there, what they did was, exactly, you're right, they pulled a whole lot of stuff out of there. And when you compare the agreed statement that they landed on last year to compare to the different agreed statements that came out in previous years, it is a schmozzle. And it's not something that we can be actually proud of. And considering it was a reflection on the Beijing platform, even more so, you would have thought that that being the sub-theme, that they would have actually put a lot more thought and vigor into where have we gone, what have we improved, and put more of a baseline where you could actually see some changes that had happened since Beijing. Yeah. Hopefully that's answered what you wanted. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Helen. So, Dr. Yasmin, you're first on the line.
Thank you very much. I have some questions. Susan, are you going to have a simultaneous translation on the platform? It's one question.
Say that again.
Do you think that you will have a simultaneous translation in the platform?
Yeah, we had a long conversation about that yesterday, and some of us are demanding that we have to. I mean, we can't go on like this, particularly if we're now so regional and we don't have translation. We can't go. And so what I suggested is, I believe Hunter College, part of City College that I taught, City University that I taught in for years, has a translation department, and that perhaps we can bring in translators that way. But the other thing is, if people in their parallel events could provide translation, that would be wonderful. It's hard for us to do it for the 650 events. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Another question is about the regional caucus. Are you planning to address this, to put it on the agenda?
Yes. I believe we will have caucus meetings, as we do every year, regional caucus meetings. Some of them meet during the year. Certainly the European North America one that I belong to meets a lot. I don't know always about, it seems to me that Latin America and Caribbean, that Mabel from Argentina does a lot with, is very active.
Mabel Mateo.
Yeah, Mabel, very impressive. Yeah,
Yes.
caucus.
Argentina.
Yes, Argentina. Yes, doing some good things. And Mexico too. Yeah,
Yes.
doing some good things.
Thank you. And the other question is about the reports. We used to have, in the time of ARSU, all the reports in the website. And I cannot find any since time ago.
When you say reports, what do you mean? Which report?
The annual report of BPW International that we have to present to maintain our ECOSOC status.
Oh, right. That happens so many years, and it's not connected really with CSW.
Okay.
I don't believe. But the statement, I just edited our statement and sent it off to Catherine, and it was written by Lesha and Marie-Claude, and Eva and I edited. I hope that should be on a website somewhere. You all should have access to that. It is sent to UN Women, and then they print it. Anyway, so our statement is done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, before I go to our next person in the queue, I want to also mention and ask you, Susan, actually just check with you if I'm correct, but generally speaking, we must register in advance without cost for the open forum, and in so doing can attend the parallel events. So when you mentioned 650 parallel events plus an indeterminate number of side events by countries, there is a process. Even if you are not a delegate, there's a process by which anyone can attend those if they've gone through that registration. I'm assuming for the virtual setup that will be similar.
That will be similar. What happens, UN Women on the website puts out all of the side events, and a lot of them you can sign up for, and you have to keep watching for that to be put on their site, and then sign up, and then you will be brought into the virtual meeting, if it is virtual, which I think it will be.
Okay, but probably we also must register first through NGO CSW. So
Well,
being on their mailing list would let us know about that as well.
Yeah, that's separate. And then you do that, you're registering for the NGO side. And then the UN Women handles the side events. Members.
I just remember whenever I've attended, I actually had to register online in advance through, I thought NGO CSW, but maybe it was through UN Women. And
No.
that was,
You do both. Because
Okay.
you want to be able to get into the parallel event side and also,
and the side events.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so register wherever you can. Okay.
exactly, that's the message.
Okay, so next in line we have Sylvia.
Thank you very much. I could like to raise a question about. First of all, I have listened that next year we will celebrate our BP Leader Summit from BPW International in New York. Therefore, if they are planning to celebrate our Leader Summit in New York, we will have to travel to New York for this event. As BPW Spain, you know that we have the ECOSOC, and we will use our time also to attend the United Nations event. And we would, but we would like to know if somebody of you knows if this event will take place or not. That is our first question. The second one is for Susan. Last year, when we present our statement, we have checked all the lists where all the statements were listed, and BPW International have not any statement published. Where the only one that was published was with another association, but not alone. Not as we have done, that we make a single statement for BPW Spain, because I always like to check what BPW International has published, and I couldn't find it last year. Thank you.
Okay, so I will defer to Sylvia's first question, which, if any of you has any knowledge about the Leaders Summit at this stage.
Well, Diana put it in the box, but it's a definite that it's not happening in New York City because I've canceled the reservations.
So perhaps virtual then. We can hope. Okay, and Susan, the second.
We did not have one last year virtually. I don't know if Diana has any information about that, but there was no Leaders Summit last year.
Oh, that's,
If I may answer and about,
Certainly,
this.
certainly.
No, we, as you all know, we had our executive meeting in Switzerland a few days ago. And that was a decision taken because of CSW. We are not having our Leader Summit this year. And there was nothing decided about having a virtual leader. I think we will have Leader Summits in each regional conference and in every event, and there will be one in Portugal. I don't know why, but there will be one in Portugal next time, very soon. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Diana. So Susan,
what about Portugal? I didn't understand.
Regional Leaders Summit.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
Yes.
Leaders Summits are attached to each regional conference
Yes.
now.
But we don't have a federation in Portugal.
No, exactly. That's why my question was, how come we have one in Portugal? I think there is Irene Natividad having her event, and maybe there we will have a Leader Summit. I really didn't get that point. I'm sorry, ladies, but I know we're not having one in New York.
Okay, thank you, Diana. But we don't know yet whether there will be anything virtual, so we'll have to stay tuned for that. Susan, did you want to respond to Sylvia's second question, which was to you?
I will take a look, but you're probably right if you didn't see it. And then I can ask UN Women, it may be that if you don't have separate ECOSOC standing for the Spain NGO, that we can't. I don't know. I know Seroptimus has multiple federations or whatever with separate ECOSOC standing, but let me find out. Yeah, it looks like Yasmin knows, and Hellen may know that about that too.
Yeah, during my term, we have an agreement, Sylvia, with the former federations that were part of 5O to write joint statements. So also later, the UN recommend that we present statements with another NGOs. So during my term, it was Soroptimist and University Women and I don't remember. Sonta International. So we put together only one document signed by all. So that represent more power for us, that this the biggest women organizations sign a statement. So that is why maybe you cannot find a single document for BPW International, but a joint statement.
But you're talking about last year, Sylvia.
Right? I don't know what happened.
Yeah. What we tend to do now is we do our statement and then we ask other people to sign on. And Catherine's doing that right now. And it's not as joint as it was in the old days, which is just lovely. I wish we could do that now. Yeah.
Okay, so we are out of time. I want to give a great big thanks to our speakers today, Susan O'Malley, Francesca Burack, and Hellen Swales. A great thanks, as always, to my co-facilitator in this series, Dr. Yasmin Darwich, our past international president, and to each and every one of you for being here with us today. This is recorded, as you know, and it will be put up on our YouTube channel in about 24 hours and announced on our Facebook event page. So we'll have our next one next month, and we have a schedule already set for the next 8 or 9 months, which you can also see on that event, the Facebook page. So we look forward to seeing all of you and everyone else that you know in BPW here again next month. Bye for now.
Bye.